Everything that we suffer as a people is a result of us not knowing what's inside of that Bible. Our identity, heritage, and culture is inside of the Bible. Blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians are Israelites, descendants of Shem, not Ham. Ham is the progenitor of the Africans, aka Egyptians. Exodus 11:7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how the Most High doth put a difference between Egyptians and Israel. They keep us sleep with their media, exactly how they want us. Brainwash them down, shape till they like it.
Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahabashai is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahabashai. And pretty much I wanted to do this video because ISUPK, and you have other different camps that may feel like how they feel. You know, just because a person of color comes from the land of Africa, that doesn't mean that they're automatically a Hamite, because you have a lot of Israelites that's still in the land of Africa or the land of Ham. So what I notice about ISUPK, they're not really spiritual. They're carnal. They don't really talk about the mystery of the Gentiles. They don't really talk about, not all the seed of Jacob, the Israelites, went on the slave ships and came to America. All right. You still had millions of Israelites that wasn't on the different slave ships and that wasn't a part of all these different slave trades that took place. All right. So you got to be careful of that with your doctrine. You got to have a balance in your doctrine, just like how Great Millstone teaches. Because, obviously the land of Ham, that's for the Hamites. That's their inheritance that the Most High gave them. But you still got to specify that, there's 18 nations, and you got to explain to people the difference between the seed of Israel and the seed of Ham. All right. So just because a person or a so-called black person, comes from the land of Africa or they're living in Africa, that don't necessarily make them a Hamite. All right. Now, let's just get into the lesson real quick. So this is Exodus chapter 11 and verse 7. It says, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord, now whenever you see the word Lord in caps, it's referring to the God of Israel, Yahweh. All right. That's his name. That's his one and only true name. It says, doeth put a difference in what? Customs, ways of worship, right? Because you have to understand, when you read the scriptures, all the heathen nations, all 17 of them, they're all pagan worshipers, all right? They all commit fornication. They all worship the creation, than the creator himself. Us as the Israelites, that's what makes us different. The Heavenly Father is dealing with us directly, and he's a true and living God, as well as his only begotten Son, Yahabashai. And we worship Yahweh and Yahabashai, the creator of all creation. But the heathen, they worship the creation more than the creator himself. All right. They don't pay homage. They don't give reference and worship Yahabashai. All right. So that's the difference. It's a difference in culture. It's a difference in custom. It's a difference in spirit. Right. It says, doeth put a difference between the Egyptians and Ham, because there's two different seed lines. And this is what you need to understand in the scriptures. After the flood, through Noah's 3 sons, there was 18 seeds or 18 nations that was established. And everybody on the planet Earth come from one of these 18 seed lines. All right. Now, the seed of the promise, the chosen nation on the planet Earth is who? The Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. Our seed makes up the 12 tribes of Israel. nations are formed from the seed of a man. And all the people of the planet Earth, they're descendants of their forefathers, all right, that started from one seed. So that's what you need to understand. So the Egyptians, when you read Genesis, the 10th chapter, the Egyptians, they come from Ham's seed line, all right? And then out of Shem, you get the fathers of the promise, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians, we are Shemitic. We're not Hamitic, all right? So there's a difference in seed, and we understand that men carry the seed. What's the seed? The sperm. A man and a woman get together. He puts his seed, which is the sperm, inside of the woman. You could look at the woman as the planet Earth, all right? She nurtures that seed in her womb and caters to that seed, and then she gives birth to that man's seed. So that child's nationality, that child's identity and culture is supposed to take upon, is based upon what? The seed of the father, all right? So even though we're two dark nations, that doesn't mean that we come from the same seed line, all right? Remember, to each particular seed is tied to what? A culture, an inheritance, a plot of land on the planet Earth, right? When you read the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, and you can search this up, this is the definition for Ham, which Ham is the forefather or the progenitor of the Hamites, the indigenous Africans, right? Because you got people that fled Roman persecution, that fled into the interiors of Africa, as I'm going to show you, which is the seed of Israel. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And then you got the people who was already living there, which is who? The people I'm about to read about, the Hamites, all right? So the word Ham, it says perhaps hot, right? Because that region is hot. Hence, that's why, they're so damn dark, all right? It says the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood. It says, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood, he became the progenitor, meaning the first, the beginning of the dark races. Because this is what you need to understand. Once you get deeper and knowing the true gospel and doctrine through Yahushua, right, through the Holy Spirit, but from his men on the planet Earth, the men of great millstone, you understand what? All nations of the planet Earth have skin tone or melanin. Melanin. All right, certain words Jake can't pronounce, so lock it. All right. But, like dark hue, so to say, brown hue, lighter hue. They may be called like yellow. I got a lot of cousins and relatives. They used to say, oh, high yellow. Because I have family, from the Carolinas, like Charlotte, Carolina. All right, South Carolina. So, they used to say high yellow, but it's still hue. It's still, brown. All right. So every nation, all nations except for the Edomites, they have hue. All right. They have color, brown skin. Some darker shades, some in between, some lighter shades. All right. But it's still hue. The Edomites is the only seed line on the planet Earth that don't have hue. All right. Why is that? Because it goes back to the curse that was put on Cain, which was a distinguishing mark, a banner of remembrance on how he's a liar and he killed his brother Abel. All right. So that's why they look like how they look. And then Esau, when he was born, he was born without no pigmentation, because you understand that spirit that was in Esau is Cain. All right, because the scriptures, it deals with reincarnation for those that can receive it. So it goes on to say, so it says he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. So wait a minute, the Negroes, this is people's argument. Oh, well, we came from Africa, so we got to be African. That's the motherland, that's the homeland, because that's where the ships came from. But what about the history before Africa? Do y'all know anything about our dwelling, our culture, what we was doing before we got sold into slavery? What's our history before Africa? Can you prove that Africa is the motherland and that's where we come from? Y'all can't prove it. Why? Because y'all was force-fed that by the school system, the Board of Ed, which, by the way, was funded, and it was started by the Rockefellers. When you do your research, you know, the Board of Ed, all right, this school system, college, it comes from Jewish men, all right, Edomites. They started, you know, the school system when you do your research. Let me just read this to you real quick, because you got to understand how deep the deception goes by the Edomites, man. They got control over everything. And this is how we know, pursuing the Daniel, the 2nd chapter, 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, it mentions that the Edomites will be ruling in the last days. They're the last heathen nation to rule before the kingdom of heaven is established. And what nation will be in rulership when YAHWH returns back? The Edomites, all right? So they have control over absolutely every grip in society. So unless the Holy Spirit is dealing with you, and you would have to, you know, be the elect if you endure to the end, you know, you will be deceived by his democracy, his westernization, his man-made religions that come from the Roman Catholic Church. It would be easy for you to fall into the snares of the devil one way or another, all right? Whether it be your career, wanting to climb up the ladder, wanting to be famous. I mean, all roads lead to them controlling you, because they control, you know, all aspects of life pretty much on the planet Earth through the will of the Most High, all right? So check this out, the dark truth of the educational system shaped by John D. Rockefeller, right? And this is the article from medium.com. Let's go down here. It says, I just want to get into the point, but it's a good article because I did a video on this already. It says the American educational system is a cornerstone of societal development, has undergone numerous transformations over the years. One influential figure in shaping the landscape of education was John D. Rockefeller, a name often associated with wealth and industrial prowess. However, as I dove into the annals of history, and this is this guy talking, or this woman talking, all right, Sophia, all right, so it says, a disconcerting truth emerges, one that raises questions about the true motives behind Rockefeller's educational endeavors. The early 20th century educational revolution. During the early 20th century, John D. Rockefeller, a titan of American business world, meaning he had a high status, you know, he was known, all right, in the American business world. So it says, sought to leave a lasting legacy. His philanthropic initiatives, particularly in education, led to the creation of the General Education Board, GEB, in 1902. On the surface, this seemed like a benevolent move, with Rockefeller expressing a desire to improve the educational system and uplift society. However, a closer inspection reveals a more sinister side to his actions: control and standardization. It says, Rockefeller's influence on education was not solely altruistic. The GEB played a pivotal role in imposing a standardized model of education across the nation. Talk about America, right? It says this standardization, while seemingly efficient, carried with a hidden agenda to mold a workforce that would serve the interests of industrialists like Rockefeller himself. All right? So pretty much the school systems is to indoctrinate you with their lies, their agendas, so that they can control society, but ultimately breed you to be a slave, to constantly keep, you know, the country going. All right? To keep you in debt. Now people are debt slaves. All right? Continuing on. It says, oh, check this out. By imposing a uniform curriculum, you want to know why everybody wear a uniform going to school? It go back to this. Y'all got to understand, you know, how they really control society. The Edomites are in rulership. It says, by imposing a uniform curriculum and promoting rote memorialization, right? The GEB aimed to create a compliant and obedient citizenry, right, meaning people in society, well suited for factory work, all right? The emphasis on conformity stifled creativity and critical thinking, limiting the potential for independent thought and innovation. So in other words, as the Rockefellers control everything, the people that's graduating these different schools, they will eventually have control over future generations because they will be born into what? Being indoctrinated by westernization, by the lies of the school system. And then ultimately, the Israelites will never wake up, right? Because that's all they do. They just force feed us civil rights. And no, you was a slave, but they don't go into Deuteronomy chapter 28 to explain why we became slaves, all right? So it says the suppression of alternative education. In addition to standardization, Rockefeller's influence extended to suppressing alternative educational models that pose a threat to industrialist agenda, all right? So they also formed this school system so that they wouldn't have any competition in business and the workforce, all right? So it goes on to say, independent and progressive educational methods that encourage critical thinking and individualism were sidelined. So people wouldn't be able to think outside the box that the Rockefellers and the elites, like the Rothschilds, make for people in society. This is why you got television. This is why you got them. They control Hollywood. They control entertainment, all right? Everything that you see in society, they're pushing forth their agendas to keep control over people. So it goes on to say, were sidelined in favor of a system designed to produce obedient workers. So this is what this system is designed for. Obedient workers. Slaves, be obedient to your masters, all right? Which they took that scripture out of context during slavery, all right? It's talking about your spiritual masters, the men that you learn the truth from. Would be great millstone, all right? It would be the apostles of great millstone on down to young brothers like myself, great millstone as a whole, beginning with the leadership, right? That's what it's talking about. That's the slave is talking about. So let's go down here. I'm going to just read this one part, but the whole article good, though. It says, Rockefeller's evil design. To truly understand the dark motivations behind Rockefeller's educational activities, one must explore the broader context of his industrial empire. Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil, wielded immense power and wealth. His interest in education was not merely philanthropic, it was a strategic move to ensure the perpetuation of his influence and wealth. By shaping the educational system to serve the needs of industry, Rockefeller aimed to create a workforce that would be docile and subservient to the economic machine, make you a debt slave, right? So here you got the Rothschilds. They control the central bank. They control the money supply. And then you got they man, pretty much on land, all right? Controlling business, controlling medicine. So they got absolute control. I don't know how you people can't see that, the Edomites, they in rulership in the last days. It ain't Japhet. How could they be Japhet and they got this much influence over the world, according to what the prophecy say? Come on, man. So it goes on to say, the ulterior motive was to maintain control over the labor force, ensuring that individuals remain cogs in the industrial wheel rather than empowered. So pretty much you would be like a hamster running on the wheel. You'll be running, but you'll never get nowhere. And that's what the matrix is, right? It says critical thinkers capable of challenging the status quo. So most people you're going to meet, they're going to be closed-minded. They're not going to challenge the status quo. The ones that's challenging the status quo is the prophets, right? It says, so that's pretty much it, all right? It's pretty much it. It's a good article if you want to read it. Now, here's the two Jewish men I mentioned, right? Meet the fathers of African history. The anthropologists who created the field of African American studies and African studies in today's universities and institutions, they were the teachers of W.E.B. Du Bois. And here's the two. It says Zora Neale Hurston, among many others. So you got a lot of Edomites that came together, all right, to control, to try to keep us asleep. That's why they constantly change our identity. Hebrews to Negroes, to color, to black, African American, so forth and so on, Latino, right? It says, yep, so these two names you could search up, and I'll zoom in. Hopefully you can make out, the letters, all right? You could screenshot it, do your own research, man. Understand what's in the scriptures. Just don't go out of bounds from what the apostles teach. See? Got all these different Edomites that came together, right? That's why Psalms, the 83rd chapter, says what it says. Because even the other heathen that team up with the Edomites, they all with one consent to take the name out of Israel out of remembrance. What's the main way they do that? By the school systems, all right? These Christian pastors promoting all these different religions. Oh, you could do as thou wilt. That's all to keep Israel asleep. But they can't stop this truth. Why? Because this predestination is according to the will of Yahweh. So nobody could stop that. No creation could stop that. So it says, not only do the black Americans out of Africa motherland concept come from the white eugenist Charles Darwin. So you got a lot of our people, they just supremely ignorant. They can't do the research for themselves, but they just accept all these different agendas, all these different lies. And then they call the Israelites, right? They'll say, oh, you're a racist cult. You guys is teaching hate, because what are we doing? We're challenging the status quo, all right? See, this is what the Edomites, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, this is what they was afraid of. They was afraid of a great awakening happening. They was afraid of men like Great Millstone and the men that teach it like mine, because we're not deceived, all right, by their devices. So it goes on to say, but the black American historical connection to the landmass presently known as Africa is based upon two Edomite men, or Jewish men, Jewish men, all right? So you got our people, they defend this. When you a so-called Negro making you an Israelite, or you a so-called Hispanic making you an Israelite, or a so-called Native American from the different, places the Native Americans is from, Canada, North, South, and Central America, different Caribbean islands. When you say that, all my roots is African, and you get these stupid, false DNA tests, you're promoting their agendas, all right? So it goes on to say, it says, for the sole purpose of suppressing records of black Americans, all right? And what records would that be? Ultimately, the Bible, linking you to the Israelites, which is why the slave trades happened, because we broke the old covenant, right? It says, I'm gonna read it again. It says, but the black American historical connection to the landmass presently known as Africa is based upon two Jewish men for the sole purpose of suppressing records of black Americans' origins and indigenous history in America within the academic institutions created by white supremacy. All right? That's why you can't talk about the Bible no more. Now, I heard that they're not even really teaching us that how they say it? They pretty much teaching that we was indentured servants. All right? It's ridiculous. So, lucky if I went on a rant, I just had to bring out that information. This is Exodus 11:7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man nor beast, that ye may know how that the Lord, right, Yahweh, doeth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. All right? Because what did the Most High give us? The Lord's statutes and commandments. This is Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. Behold, I have taught you, right, singular, I have taught you statutes and judgments. He's talking to the children of Israel, right? Even as the Lord my God, the word Lord is a cap, so that's the name Yahweh, our God, commanded me that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it, which is what? The promised land of Israel, right? Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding, right? Our heritage, our culture, our way of life, how we ought to conduct ourselves as Israelites, right? And your understanding in the sight of the nations. The nations talk about the heathen nations, right? Which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people, because they know that we're different from them. We're not bowing down to wood and stone and giving it a name and acting like, you know, the idol can eat physical food when it can't talk, it can't hear, it can't blink, it can't think. It's just a piece of element right there. All right, it's just rock. That's all it is, or stone. But that's what the heathens do. They commit idolatry, they commit fornication. So that's why the Lord was mad at us, and these different curses came upon our people. All right? Leviticus 18:1, it says, and the Lord, right? The word Lord is in caps, so it's saying Yahweh. And the Lord Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, right? The so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians, and say unto them, he is the Lord our God, right? Yahweh is our God. It says, after the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do. So there's the difference right there. We was dwelling in Egypt, but we're not actually Egyptians, all right? It says, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do. So the Lord is telling us, don't act like the Egyptians. Don't keep their customs, all right? Don't keep their ways of worship. Don't be pagans like how they being pagans. Don't commit fornication how they commit fornication. You got our people, they want to big up Egypt so bad. The Lord is clearly showing you the difference in this verse, all right? It says, after the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do. Don't keep none of their customs. Don't shave your beard like them. Don't get baldies like them, so forth and so on, right? It says, and after the doings of the land of Canaan, right? So we're not supposed to copy none of Ham's descendants, you know, concerning their customs and how they worship. We're not supposed to follow the way of the heathen in general, because we got our own laws, statutes, and commandments. It says, whether I bring you, shall ye not do. So we're not supposed to keep the way of the heathen in the promised land of Israel. It says, neither shall ye walk in their ordinances, meaning their laws, their customs, their ways of worship. It says, ye shall do my judgments and keep my ordinances to walk therein. All right, I am Yahweh your God. So that's what Yahweh our God was telling us through Moses. All right, it says, yep. So that's it with that. Now let's go here, because we need to understand how we got in Africa the first place. We got in Africa because we was under the curses, just like how the Lord had us oppressed and afflicted by the ancient Egyptians, and we was dwelling amongst them. But the Lord said, don't do as the Egyptians do, you know, do what I say to do. The same thing applied to, you know, when we fled all over Africa and the lands we've been scattered in. It still remains the same. This is Deuteronomy 28:15. Because you want to know, oh, how come so-called black people is in the condition that they're in? How come so-called Hispanics and Native American Indians, the different Indian tribes, you know, how come they go through so much oppression? Because look at where the Northern Kingdom, all right, the so-called Hispanics, Latinos, the different Indian tribes, look at where they from. They get power outages, crime is at an all-time high, all right? Drugs is rampant in their society. The water is polluted. Insane amount of hyperinflation. I mean, come on, you telling me that they're not Israelites? Anyways, but the point is, Deuteronomy chapter 28 explains the living conditions of the true Israelites, because the true Israelites, they would be on the bottom. They wouldn't be the heads of their particular countries or islands, you know, where they're dwelling at. They wouldn't be the top leaders, all right? This is Deuteronomy 28:15. It says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice pursuant to Luke 1:70 is the prophets, right? Which are all men that come from the seed of Israel. It says, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So these curses that came upon the true Israelites, they will live a life of poverty. You know, they would have to have a come up to have any form of wealth. They wouldn't be in control of nothing. Because when you read verse 48, it said that what? That we would have to serve our enemies for the one of all things. And then eventually, it goes into the siege of Jerusalem, 70 AD. And then it would tell you, which I'm going to get it right now, why we got dispersed. We got dispersed, through the different slave trades, right? So now check this out. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies, right? And this happened during the siege of Jerusalem under the Flavian dynasty. It says, thou shalt go out one way against them, right, out of Jerusalem, because that's what happened with 70 AD. Titus had 60,000 Roman soldiers besiege Jerusalem, so there was no way out. So our people inside of Jerusalem, because they couldn't leave to get food and water and herbs and fruits, they resorted to cannibalism. When you read in the 50th verses on down, all right? That was the Roman Empire that did that to us. And who controlled the Roman Empire? The Edomites. Titus, he was an Edomite, right? So we could only leave one way, and then we fled into the interiors of Zen, in Africa, right? So it says, thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, all throughout Africa, right? And thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth, all the different slave trades, right? So now let's read verse 64, because you also need to understand that, yeah, it was the Hamites that sold us to the Arabs, that sold us to, the Edomites. But even before that time, you had Jakes, you had Israelites that was dwelling in Africa too. So some of them could have been selling their own people out of ignorance, all right? But the crime of selling the Israelites is on Ham, though, because it said Ham did it, all right? This is Deuteronomy 28:64. It says, and the Lord shall scatter thee. Hence, that's where you get the term African diaspora, which is why I have this here. Let's read it. All right. I'll start at the top. The phrase African diaspora gradually entered common usage at the turn of the 21st century. The term diaspora originates from the Greek diaspora, meaning scattering, which gained popularity in English in reference to the Jewish diaspora, all right, which is mentioned where? What I'm reading, Deuteronomy 28:64, before being more broadly applied to other populations, all right? So there you go. So they link the scattering of the Jews in the Bible to the African diaspora. Why? Because they're saying that we're the real Jews, all right? That's why I got that there. So, yeah, Deuteronomy 28:64, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. All right. You had a transatlantic slave trade on the west and on the east. You had the Indian Ocean slave trade. You had a British slave trade, Dutch, French, Iberian. I mean, everybody took part in the slave trade. You had the slave trade by the Portuguese to Brazil, right? So we were scattered all over the damn place. So the seed of Israel is in every place you can think of. That's why the scriptures say that Israel shall be as the sands of the sea. You go to any country or island, it got a nice beach there with some sand. You could liken that to the Israelites. So it says, and thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So that's what happened to our people. They got scattered amongst the heathen, learned of the heathen ways, and they started to act and think generations down the line that they were heathen. So it was a great falling away first, all right? But now through Yahushua, through the prophets, now the elect is waking up and understanding that we're not African, we're not Spanish, that we're Israelites, all right? So now, let's read this. This is Luke chapter 21 and verse 20. It says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, it's talking about 70 AD, in which I was just telling you, all right? Even Yahushua, when you read Matthew, the 24th chapter, the first 2 verses, Yahushua, he prophesied about 70 AD, how the Romans, which were Edomites, was going to destroy the second temple. But see, the wicked Pharisees, wicked scribes, the Sorceries, right? They took that literal. Like if he was going to destroy the temple and then build it back up the third day, the third temple is a spiritual temple that represents the elect of Israel. All right. It says, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. It says, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. All right. So what mountains is it talking about? It's talking about Africa. Because if you look at a map and you see where Jerusalem or the land of Israel is at, and you see where Africa is at, it's right there. It would be easy to fled into Africa. All right. So even when you read in the scriptures, our forefathers, they always went down into Africa to flee persecution. So that ain't nothing new. All right. You had our forefathers, they sojourned, from the land of Chaldees to Syria to Egypt or Africa. All right. So it goes on to say, it says, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. So our people, they fled all throughout Africa. Some even went into Saudi Arabia, all over. All right. That's why you could go on YouTube and you could search up, black people in Yemen, black people in India, black people in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all these different places on the east. Why? Because you had the Indian Ocean slave trade, and then you had them which fled out of Judea, Jerusalem, into these different parts, fleeing Roman persecution. All right. So it says, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck. And the precept to that is Deuteronomy 28, from like verses 49 through like 56. Let's talk about like the siege of Jerusalem. All right. And I already broke it down for you earlier with the cannibalism and stuff like that, how we couldn't leave out our land. Right. So it says, in those days, 70 AD, for there shall be great distress in the land, because you couldn't leave out to get water or food. So they resorted to cannibalism, right? And wrath upon this people. Why? Because we broke the old covenant. We constantly kept going into captivity over and over again, not listening to the prophets. So there was a consequence for that. It says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. All right? So what does that talk about? When you read this book, page 84, that's all you got to read. Page 84 from the book From Babylon to Timbuktu. All right. The prophecy of Luke 21, verses 20 through 24. Here's the secular history, right? That confirms that prophecy. It says, during the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. Fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery, the slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. All right. So now let's read again, Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. It just said it. It just told you who the slave markets was filled with. Jews. All right. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So we're in the time of the Gentiles, pursuing the Daniel, the 2nd chapter. And who's the last heathen nation to rule? The Edomites, the revived Roman Empire. All right. So if the Edomites rule ancient Rome and the empire before that, Greece, if we in the revived Roman Empire in the form of America mainly, and then the EU, what nation would be in rulership? The Edomites. All right. So now, let's go back. When you first come into the truth, the main things you learn that the Lord hooks you with spiritually is what? Deuteronomy 28th chapter, and the fact that the Hamites, a dark nation that looks similar to us, right, in hue, they sold us to the Ishmaelites, which is the so-called Arabs, right? You got the sub-Saharan slave trade or the Arab slave trade, and then they sold us to the Edomites. Then you learn that these people right here, they funded the slave ships, all right? 98% of the slave masters were these people when you do your research. And there was a divine reason why the slave trades happened. while people constantly got scattered, constantly went into captivity, became, a lost people, a people searching for their identity, right? Because that's in the scriptures. In the early 18th century, kings of Dahomey, known today as Benin, became big players in the slave trade, right? Waging a bitter war on their neighbors. Who are their neighbors? Israelites, all right? Resulting in the capture of 10,000, including another important slave trader, the king of Wida. King Tegbusu, right, made 250,000 euros a year selling people into slavery in 1750. All right? There's a lot of information on this. It's a lot of information. All right? And this is where you get, so-called black people sold black people. No, it was Hamites that sold Israelites. All right? Let's see. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Let's read some of this, though. It says, which African king, or I'm going to replace the word African with Hamite king, sold the most slaves, a.k.a. Israelites, right? AI overview. It's difficult to pinpoint one specific African king who sold the most slaves, as the trade was a complex and widespread phenomenon involving many rulers and regions, right? So you had different African or different Hamitic kings at that time that was selling Israelites all over Africa, and they all had a hand on it, all right? You ain't just have Israelites in West Africa, all right? You had Israelites in Central Africa, North Africa, South, East, and West Africa, but the main bulk was in West Africa. That's the most famous slave trade, where the slave trade happened, the transatlantic slave trade. So it says, the kings of Dahomey, present-day Benin, were significant players in the 18th century, and their involvement in the slave trade was particularly notable, right? So these are different Hamitic kings that sold actual Israelites, a dark nation selling another dark nation. Two different seed lines, though, all right? Two different nations. Remember, nations are formed from the seed of their forefather. It says, king of Dahomey, or kings of Dahomey. In the early 18th century, the kings of Dahomey became major players in the Atlantic slave trade, waging wars on their neighbors to capture people for sale. All right? I read that one already. It says, other notable figures. It says, while Dahomey is prominent, other African rulers and regions were also involved in the slave trade. Other Hamites, right? Including the Kingdom of Congo and Queen Njishga and Mbade. All right? Probably pronouncing that wrong. You see how it's spelled. It says, the Kingdom of Dahomey. The Kingdom of Dahomey has sold hundreds of thousands of slaves to merchants like Francisco de Souza. All right? It says the Clotilda. Captain William Foster arrived in Owada, right, which is a corrupted way of saying Judah, because when you look at a map of Western Negro land, right, you can see, look, Kingdom of Judah, where at? In Africa, because they were the people or the descendants of the people that fled Roman persecution, going back to what's stated in the Bible and secular history. All right, but we're not taught this in school. We just taught that we was a bunch of slaves, and then we got rounded up. Pretty much, we got sold by our own people, and we just came to America, and we just slaves. Nobody knows our origin, but Africa is the motherland. Shit is stupid, and play it out. All right, look at that, Kingdom of Judah, or Wida, slave coast. You see that? Which is a corrupted way of saying Judah, which is the so-called Negroes. All right, let's go back. So there you go. It says the Clotilda, continuing on, a coastal port of Dahomey, and retrieved 110 slaves on the Clotilda slave ship. All right? And you might ask, what happened to the slave ships? Well, they was made out of wood, and wood, long term, that's not built to survive that many hundreds of years. All right? That many amount of years. So let's see. Let's go down here. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. So you could do your own research, all right? This is just one of the tribes. And then you got this right here, right? It's an old article. I remember Apostle Tahar, he did a video on this. My Nigerian great-grandfather sold slaves. So you had actual Israelites from previous generations. Remember, the Israelites we've been was getting scattered, all right, before the slave trades. It's just that it happened again, according to, end-time prophecy, all right? But like I said, you had Israelites that maybe they may have thought they was Hamites from being in that region so long and losing their identity generations down the line, all right? You had some of them that was selling their own people, hated their own people, all right? But the prophecy said that the Hamites would sell the Israelites, as I showed you. That's why they was waging war. That's why it was easy to identify, who's an Israelite and who's not an Israelite, all right? It would be easy to know who to round up and sell to the white man and the Arabs, all right, based off of what? Custom. You look at a lot of the customs of our people that's dwelling in Africa, they're keeping what? The Torah, all right? So there you go. So, I mean, if you want to check this article, you could check it out. It's, it's a long read. But there you go. See, transatlantic slave trade. You got a lot of Israelites that's dwelling in Africa. They're not actual Hamites, right? But they're Africans by citizenship, not sea line. All right? It's just like Paul. Paul said, I'm a Benjamite, but he had Roman citizenship. It's the same thing. Today we're Israelites, but we have American citizenship or whatever country we've been scattered in. All right? Let me finish this lesson up now. Finish it up. This is Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse, let's see. Yep, Zephaniah 2 and 12. Ye Ethiopians also, because we're not Ethiopian. Now, another lie that's out here, and I'm going to most likely do a video on it. Another lie that's out here is that the Ethiopians, they got the Ark of the Covenant. No, Jeremiah hid the Ark of the Covenant. When you read, I believe it's Jeremiah, either the second or the third chapter, and then it's brought back up in the book of Second Maccabees, I believe it is. All right? I believe it's Second Maccabees, the second chapter. Jeremiah hid the Ark of the Covenant, and only he knows at that present generation when he hid it. Only the Heavenly Father and YAHAWAHBA know where the actual Ark of the Covenant is. And we'll know that in the kingdom of heaven. But for right now, nobody knows where the Ark of the Covenant is at. And the Arks of the Covenant that you see in Ethiopia, those are replicas. And that's already confirmed already. All right? Ain't no heathen could touch or hold the Ark of the Covenant. That's crazy. All right? So it says, I'm going to read again, Zephaniah 2 and 12. Ye Ethiopians, referring to Hamites, right? So-called East Africans. It says, ye Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by my sword. All right? So the Lord is against the Hamitic nations for what they did to his people. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, the lesson was about the difference between the seed of Israel and the seed of Ham. All right? Lord willing, you was edified by the lesson. Shalom. And remember, you have Israelites that's scattered all around the earth.